Good morrow, nerds. It is I. So I've had this idea kind of knocking about in my head these past few weeks about a kind of an issue that can come up in tabletop RPGs. When you think about it, beyond the rules, the dice, the various kind of play aids, the character sheets that you have, a tabletop RPG really is not so much those physical things, but a collective delusion shared by a group of friends sat around a table. But being involved in that delusion isn't as always as it can seem. There can be, hiccups, troubles, and I've called those the imaginative gap. I want to go into why I think this happens and what the best ways to deal with it are. So I'll divide this into three sections. First, I'll look at what this imaginative gap is, what it feels like, how it can affect you. Second, I will look at the causes, both from a rules point of view and from a table point of view. And then I'll go over what I think both players and game designers can do to bridge this gap. And then, with all of that done, I will tie this video in a lovely little bow. You've probably fallen into the imaginative gap at least once. Whether it was something you tried to use a rule and you couldn't understand it, it was written in a weird way. How big is a zone? Or perhaps it was you went looking for a rule, you couldn't find it, it didn't exist, and wait, is there no long-range penalty for trying to shoot someone? It could even be where the GM is describing something and you simply can't follow. You're an auditory person and you're trying to follow a visual handout. You're a visual person trying to play theater of the mind. The GM's description makes no sense and you have no idea what's going on. And this is what the imaginative gap feels like. It's not a good thing, it's not a happy thing, but it is something that will happen at least once. And with this definition out of the way, we can go over, I think, what causes it. So there are a few ways that rules can cause the imaginative gap. I think a first good example is ill-defined, very abstract rules where you have to do a lot of the heavy lifting to make them work. A good example of this is Conan 2D20. The combat rules are incredibly vague and incredibly abstract. There is no defined length for how long a combat round is, and distances have more definition, but not much. Everything is done in terms of zones. An abstract area of ground, air, or water, which can be occupied by PCs, NPCs, terrain, random objects, whatever. And they border other zones, and the way you determine range is how many zones away is something. Same zone, that's close. Next zone over, that's medium. 2 zones away, that's long. But okay, how big is a zone then? The answer is yes. It really does depend. Are you out in the open? Are you in a forest? Are you in some underground ruin? Are you in the high seas? All of those change the zone length, and there is only very vague guidance on how any of this works. It's not the most intuitive, which Codan 2D20 full of unintuitive rules. Having played it, I can confirm that. And yeah, that's something. Another thing is the kind of very wordy or very complex rules that you just can't get your head around. It was released 2.5 decades before I was born, but AD&D's reputation for the so-called Gygaxian high prose still lives large. A friend of mine has regaled me with a story he once had of a player innocently deciding he wanted to grapple an enemy in combat, and the GM just holding his head in his hands as he tried to use the grapple flow chart, and he just couldn't. Sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's not that it's badly worded. It might be fairly well laid out, but it might just not make intuitive sense. One of my favorite games of all time that I've played a hell of a lot is Cyberpunk Red, and that game is known for its weapon range table. If you want to make a ranged attack, you take the type of weapon you're using, the distance to the target, and cross-reference it on the magic weapon range table to get a difficulty number for how hard it is to hit. Let's start out with a pistol. Up to 6 meters, difficulty 13. Up to 12 meters, difficulty 15. 25 meters, 20. 100 meters, 25. 200 meters, 30. Okay, starts out low, gets higher as you go, easy enough. Now let's look at the single shot difficulty for an assault rifle. Up to 6 meters, 17. Up to 12 meters, difficulty 16. Up to 25 meters, difficulty 15. Up to 50 meters, difficulty 13. up to 100 meters, back up to 15, up to 200 meters, all the way up to 20. 400 meters goes up to difficulty 25, and finally at 800 meters, it is now difficulty 30. So it goes down and then back up. Now, I am told by Artal Saurian that this is based off actual firearm statistics. I am not a firearms person. I have held a gun once, but I've never shot one. I will have to take their word on this. All I can say is that every group I've used this with has been confused by it. This is just the rules that exist. Not all of them do. Maybe someone didn't include a rule, or they did, in a tiny corner of a tiny page, and you just can't find it. A good example of a rule that doesn't exist that creates this imaginative gap is, I think, D&D never, or at least traditionally not having a wound penalty for taking heavy damage. In 5e, as in many editions before, at 1 HP, you are as spry, as capable, as deadly as someone at max health. And what this does is it leads to a lot of confusion and dissonance as characters behave in ways that they really shouldn't when they're as wounded as they are. It's one of the most common complaints, but it's something that D&D has never changed, because adding in a rule like that was generally seen as either too complex or leading to a death spiral, depending from edition to edition. And so, this is all of the ways, or most of the ways that rules can give you a case of the imaginative gaps. But as much as I'm sure we RPG players would all love to blame the rules for everything, sometimes we are our own worst enemies. The people who get most of the flack a lot of the time are game masters. When you're GM, it's your job to describe the situation, describe the surroundings, describe the outcomes of player actions. And it's also your job then to flub your words, to use confusing language, and to say things that make no sense to the players at all, even though they seem reasonable to you. I'm sure you've all had this. I've had this. And yep, that is one area of confusion. Although I will say, players, you can be guilty as well. I've had a fair share of players who've described an action and gone, wait, what? What are you trying to... Wait, okay. And you have to go through the whole back and forth, and so you try to bridge the gap with them. A good example that actually covers both of these issues is one from a recent D&D session. I rolled up a random encounter, 3 giant boars picking over an abandoned campsite. Nice and easy. The cleric goes up and says, "Hey, can I animal handling the boars?" And I go, "Okay, how?" I want to animal handling them. How? I want to animal handling them. Now, I have a habit. When a player leads with a game mechanic rather than a narrative description, I will drag something more less gamey out of them, kicking and screaming if I have to. But it became pretty clear that this was not that sort of issue. This was the player wanted to know if animal handling could be used to do a thing, and if it could, what sort of thing. And so he and I had a bit more of a back and forth, and we agreed that he could try a check to calm the boars down and prevent them from attacking. And you know what? He passed his roll. The only wrinkle is the party, the rest of them, had their own roll to make to stop the pack mule from flipping out at the smell of big angry boar. Long story short, the boars were eventually roused. The cleric was gored by a boar, critical hit, 43 damage, down in 1. The rest of the party were in a grappling match with the mule, trying and failing to revive the cleric, and otherwise screwing up. Eventually, they shoved a healing potion down the cleric's throat. They fought off the boars, though not before one of the boars managed to nearly kill the mule, and they cursed me for being an evil GM, which is, typical them, but I was being an evil GM. But that's, description issues, but there is, I think, another level to this. One thing that I found, there are some players who do very well with battle maps, but they struggle more with theater of the mind. There are some, when you have things visually in front of you, combined with that GM description, it can, create a very immediate, intuitive experience that just does not exist. I've had players get confused on how far away they are, how many enemies there are, all sorts of things like that I've had to kind of handle and finagle to the best of my abilities. I actually used to have the opposite problem. For all that I call myself the all-seeing eye, I am very nearly, though not entirely, blind. And my first experience of a battle map came from an online game in the middle of COVID. I joined partway through, a lot of established characters, and I was trying to get settled in, and I couldn't really follow what was going on. Because during combats and even during just dungeon crawls, I was usually looking at the wrong part of the map, and so that left me confused and feeling a bit left out. Now I knuckled down. I learned to use Roll20 better. I got better at making sure that I was always looking at the right thing, and so now I only lost track of the game during 15-minute long rules disputes. Big improvement. So let's talk about what rules designers can do to kind of prevent the imaginative gap. I do need to give a disclaimer. I am not a game designer. I have made a few attempts, but all of them belong in the deepest, darkest depths of my hard drive. If you have any feedback, if you think I've made a mistake, please leave me a comment, in the section down below, and I will happily take that, take those responses, forward. But the first point I would make is explain your damn rules. There are some systems, Cyberpunk Red, that try to be very efficient and matter of fact in how they explain the rules, and I think that they sometimes lose something in failing to justify why the rules are the way they are. Some of these confusions, like say the weapons table, can be explained with a single paragraph saying, okay, shooting at close range, in reality, is not always as effective as you think, especially against a human target and not a steel target, several meters away. I think a game that does this sort of thing better is Torchbearer. It's an OSR adjacent, very indie, dungeon crawling kind of game. And it has a lot of very abstract, very, very weird rules. Combat, negotiations, chases are all handled with a system that uses 4 actions: attack, defend, feint, maneuver. Doesn't matter what you're doing. It also has some other rules that we will get into, but this is a taste of what it's like. But it does a very good job explaining why it is the way it is. And so I actually do kind of come to appreciate and respect the rules. Now, you won't think of all the issues beforehand. You will send a game off to be printed, and then players will come back and say, hey, wait, this thing that you thought made sense doesn't make sense. If that happens, some places will do an FAQ or errata. D&D has its Sage Advice column where Jeremy Crawford answers the same rules question over and over. Artelsurian has its monthly Night City Council podcast, which James Hart does with John the Wise. And those work fairly well. I tend to treat them as unofficial, and I will over all these things, but some people like them, and more power to them. The other issue that I would bring up is letting players play the way they want to. I brought up Torchbearer, and I'm about to bring up a loosey-goosey, setting-agnostic game called Savage Worlds as well. Torchbearer is a theatre of the mind only game. There are no maps, even though it is a dungeon crawler. The map-making mechanic is a list that you add the places that you have visited to. It is text document based. And what that means is that if you're a visual person and you struggle following GM descriptions, you're shit out of luck. But then on the other hand, you have Savage Worlds, which is a very grid-based game. For all combat, there's precise ranges, precise movement, precise areas of effect. And if I wasn't using a grid for that game, it would have been even more of a pain in the ass than it already was. And so I think both of these games, I understand why they do what they do, especially Torchbearer with its very well laid out rules. But I do sometimes feel that a bit more flexibility would, one, mean more players would enjoy these games, and two, the players that do play them would get more enjoyment as they would have fewer confusions. But that's just my 2 cents on a subject in which I'm not particularly qualified. But as these things go, designers don't do everything. We as players can do plenty of stuff ourselves. The first thing that I kind of recommend is allowing liberal table chatter. People who learn their RPG etiquette, maybe they're newbies or they learn it from actual plays, may try to avoid, table chatter as much as possible, but I don't agree with this kind of philosophy. I've always held that table chatter is like the UI elements of a video game. It's there to convey information that's hard or even impossible to explain in character. And so, in an actual play, where you want to keep an audience entertained and to avoid getting bogged down out of character, yes, I understand why table chatter is kept to a minimum. But for those of us, basement dwellers, we don't have that constraint. We can, chatter away to our heart's content and clarify things in an out of character way that can be more direct and more effective. I think the second point is play aids. And what I mean by this is, one, battle maps. I've expressed my opinions on them. I say that they're good. But I think that there's a bit more to this. Play mats, which I've used in things like Torchbearer, which I've mentioned before. It does have these kind of three phases that it uses that are highly structured. And being able to have play mats to track light, food, actions, all sorts of things, that can be pretty helpful. At least when you can see the play aids. And then finally, just cheat sheets, rules references, GM screens. All of these rules reminders can help keep you away from the kind of animal handling situations from earlier. I think which I maybe should have led with, but I didn't want to, is rationalization, where you come up with your own kind of personal explanation for why a rule works the way it does that helps you make sense of it better. For me, I did this a lot with Conan 2D20. I kind of had to. I made my own personal, recommendation of how long a round should be. In, hand to hand, it's about 5 or 10 seconds. In naval combat, 15 minutes. How big is a zone? In hand to hand, it's about 100 square yards. In, in sea combat, it's a quarter mile to a side. All of these things to make your own life easier. This is you're adding, shared delusion rules to the shared delusion game. It's the most natural way to do things, and it is the most common one. Another thing to consider is that, house rules. But this is, be careful. When I first started playing Cyberpunk Red, our GM started, changing the rules before we finished making characters, and he kept on going from there. Eventually, he kept getting trouble with the rules not working. I wonder why. And switched us over to Savage Worlds, where he just kept on changing and changing the rules until his house rule notepad document became utterly labyrinthine. He had this, custom life path system that still gives me Vietnam flashbacks to this very day. And so, yeah, house rules can help. They can clear up imaginative gaps. They can add in rules where they weren't there or fix rules that don't make sense. But use them sparingly. Please. Please. And finally, if a game just doesn't work, play something else. You don't have to play D&D. You don't have to play Pathfinder. You don't have to play Cyberpunk. We're in a saturated RPG market. Use what you want. There is something out there for you. And so, yeah, to kind of round things off, the imaginative gap is what happens when something in the rules or at the table prevents you from engaging with the game. It's not a fun thing. It's not a happy thing, but it will happen. And when it does, you need to find the way that works for you to fix it. What do I say? Always play the way you want to play, and that will be the thing that helps you through with these situations. And with that, this video is at an end. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hopefully will have. This is my first attempt at a video, and I hope to have another one coming out soon, or whenever I get it done, realistically. In the meantime, please like the video. Please leave a comment with your feedback. Please share it with your friends. And if you really, really liked it, then hit the subscribe button and hit the bell as well for notifications. But for now, stay sane, fellow nerds, and farewell.